Welcome to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco, bringing you interviews with industry experts and regular folks who tested the job search waters and succeeded, and strategies to tell your story and land you job interviews in 60 days, guaranteed. Here's your host, Virginia Franco.
Hello, everyone. I am delighted to introduce my latest guest to the Resume Storyteller podcast. I have with me today Nancy Collamer, who is a semi-retirement expert and the author of Second Act Careers, 50-plus Ways to Profit from Your Passions During Semi-Retirement. Nancy writes a monthly blog on work and purpose for nextavenue.org, which is a PBS site for people over the age of 50, and Forbes.com. And she also publishes a free bi-monthly newsletter about Second Act Careers through her website, mylifestylecareer.com. Nancy, welcome so much. I'm just delighted to have you on.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here.
So I just quickly gave an overview of what you do, but I would love to hear in your words, how did you come to be in this role?
Yeah. So long story short, I have always been fascinated by this topic of how people work on a flexible basis, and also fascinated with just the larger topic of careers. My background was I spent the first 10 years of my career in corporate HR. And then at the point I was getting ready to become a mom, I left corporate America and actually went back to graduate school at that point and got a master's in career development, and really concentrated the first 15 years or so of my private practice on the niche of moms who wanted to work on a flexible basis, because I was surrounded by women like that, professional women, they were trying to figure out, I'd love to work, but how do I do so without working a full-time job? And so that was my area of focus for 15 years, and then in 2008 really shifted over to the boomers, because they also are wondering about that same question, particularly as they look past the point when they retire from their full-time careers, and they still want to be productive and engaged and hopefully earn some income in the process. And how do you go about doing that?
Well, I wish I'd known about you back when I first started having my kids. I had 4 kids in 5 years, and I sure could use your help with figuring out how the heck to keep working with the expenses of childcare. But you're right. Many generations need this, are interested in flexible work. I think it's appealing across ages, but I know that the boomers, face a unique set of challenges. So with that in mind, sort of tell me, in terms of the people you work with today, what are the unique challenges facing them when they are looking to make that career change, and find flexible work?
Yeah, so just to clarify here, really the people that I work with are people who have really moved on to that post-retirement phase, for whatever retirement means these days. I mean, that's outdated word in a lot of respects. But so I work with people who've left their full-time careers. They may be, 60, 62, and they're saying, wow, I've got, 20 years ahead of me during which I'd like to do something with my time. What do I do next? So the challenges that they face are a couple of things. And the first and the most obvious is just sort of figuring out what is it that they'd like to do. Do they want to continue doing something connected to their old line of work, perhaps, work as a consultant or teach as an adjunct professor, do some writing? Do they want to continue down that path, or are they looking to explore different options and maybe do that thing that they've always wanted to do for a long time but didn't have the opportunity when they had the pressures of having to earn a full-time income? So that's the first thing, is sort of figuring out what it is that you want to do. I think another really big challenge that they face is that many people, when they hit this point, they're sort of trying to figure this all out by themselves. And they're not, you think back to other transitions that you go through. When you graduate from college, you have lots of other people who are going through the same thing at the same time. When someone retires from their full-time career, oftentimes they're sort of doing it by themselves, and that can make the process really challenging as well.
No, that's a really good point. You're right. It's a little isolating where other big milestones or changes, just naturally you're enveloped with other people.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd say the other thing, too, is that for a lot of people, when you're looking at how do I take my skills and interests and repackage them into a much more flexible way of working, it's a very new dynamic for most people. You've been working full-time as an accountant for 30 years, or you've been working full-time in corporate America. So it's not not just the question of what is it that I'm going to do. It's also, what's possible for me to do? Gee, I've heard about things like working from home, or I've heard about this gig economy, but how does that translate to my life? Yeah, so there's an education process that takes place here.
So in terms of that education process, or maybe it's the learning curve, are there things that you find people are, pleasantly or maybe not pleasantly surprised by when they start thinking about how to repackage their skills for this sort of new work dynamic?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And fortunately, what I can say is I think once people really start to get into this, they're actually really surprised and excited by what's out there. And that's why I always encourage people, even if you're still working full-time, to start to read about what other people are doing during this phase of life. Because when you start to read the stories about what other people are doing, it excites people. You begin to see possibilities that you didn't even imagine. And that's part of what I love to do is through my website at mylifestylecareer.com and through the articles I write on Next Avenue, is I love to say to people, look at what's possible. You really can do some really fun things through the gig economy. And I love writing about those second act stories because I think it opens people's eyes up to a whole different way of working that they just didn't even know about before.
So because we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, so what other advice can you give someone who is maybe working or stopped working and then realizes that, maybe I do need to go back to work. Maybe I'm not as much fun to be retired as I thought.
Yeah. So a couple of things. I've touched on the problems of trying to do all of this on your own. So to that point, I would say it's really helpful to find a buddy or find a group of other people who are going through this same transition at the same time. And you can really help each other to explore ideas and to be a support team for one another. So find some support. I think surround yourself with those second act stories. On my website, I have a list of 100-plus great second act career resources, and on there I list a number of different sites where you can read these second act stories and you can sign up for free newsletters so that you get a steady diet of what's possible. Another thing I would suggest, and this is true for anyone who's considering a career change, is, let's say you're thinking, gee, I've always had a passion for jewelry making, but I've never done anything about that. Take a class, take a workshop. I'm not suggesting that you sign up for a full degree program, but the options for training and for taking a one-session workshop or a one-week class, there are just thousands of possibilities out there, both online and offline, where you can just test things out in small doses. And along with
nothing to lose except for, a little money and your time.
Yeah, exactly. And along with maybe taking some classes, again, if you're thinking about doing, let's say, getting back to the jewelry making example, rather than setting up a whole new shop, maybe try producing a few pieces and use an online platform like Etsy to see, do my pieces sell? Or, you can look for a local crafts fair where for a weekend you can try selling your things. And I always say to people that it's small steps really add up to big changes. And it's a step-by-step process. And the other thing that happens is as you begin to test things out, then you learn what you like and what you don't like. And the other thing is you start to get some feedback from potential clients and customers.
That's a good point. And that feels less daunting than doing a headlong dive. A small dipping your toe in the water feels less scary than a full-on dive into something because, again, you don't know what you don't know. And you might not like it. It might not work out. People might not like your stuff. You never know.
Yeah, and, let me give you an example of this in real life. The other day I was talking with a woman here locally where I live, and she sells empanadas. It's a great story. She's from Argentina. She is a powerhouse. She has 5 kids, and, in her spare time, she decided to start making these empanadas. And she did not start out with the plan to turn this into a business. What happened was so many people loved her empanadas that every time she made them, that friends started saying to her, hey, could you make me, a dozen? for a cocktail party that I'm having.
Mm-hmm.
And she started just organically getting requests. And that started happening. And then she thought, maybe I can try doing this on a slightly larger scale. So she sent out an email to some people that she knew, and they started ordering. And then she decided, maybe I need to take this a little bit more seriously. And she started selling the empanadas at a farmer's market. And today she now has a website. She's starting to ship around the country. She has expanded her product line, and she is renting space at a commercial kitchen. And what's really cool about her story is part of her mission. She said, I always wanted this business to be about more than just me. So part of her mission is that she donates a significant percentage of her profits back to a charity in Argentina because she wants to help out her home country.
Oh, my gosh.
And so
I love that.
Yeah, I think it's just a great example of you start out small, you test the market. And what she said to me was, she said, in doing this, by starting out small, it really helped her learn about what are the most popular flavors and how much should I price my products for, and answer those questions rather than having to, hire somebody to figure that out for you.
Right,
so
right.
It's step by step.
Yeah. Because many of us are not born CEOs. We don't, in our previous roles, we didn't understand all the aspects of running a business.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you're doing with these second stage careers.
Right. And that brings me to another really important point, which is that most people, when we're talking about semi-retirement work options, yes, there are some really interesting part-time jobs out there, but the vast majority of people are going to put together a portfolio of activities that meet their needs. And oftentimes that means that you're going to be doing something that is entrepreneurial in nature. And since you have been working for a corporation, you don't know, a lot of the things you need to know as an entrepreneur, everything from pricing to marketing to zoning regulations. And so take advantage of all the wonderful resources that are out there, the Small Business Administration and organizations like SCORE that can help you learn how you get a business up and running and grow it so it can be successful.
Now, what is SCORE? I'm not familiar with that name.
Yeah, so SCORE is run underneath the Small Business Administration. You can find them online at SCORE.org. And SCORE is an incredible resource, which they run a variety of workshops for people who are either starting or in the early stages of their business. But one of the great things that SCORE does is you can sign up for a meeting, either in person or by telephone, with someone who will give you free business coaching, mentors. So as an example, again, getting back to this. Yeah, the woman who does the empanadas, that was one of the very first things she did, was she actually set up a meeting with someone at SCORE. It's free. She had a consultation with them about, what are the things she needed to know if she was going to run a food business. And SCORE actually, it stands for Service Corps of Retired Executives. So it's a way you can tap into incredible expertise, and it doesn't cost you a dime.
Oh, what a fabulous resource. Okay, and then when we get off this call, I need to get this woman's number because I'm from Uruguay, which is right next to Argentina, so we eat the same foods, and I don't want to make my own empanadas, but I would gladly ship them in.
Empanadasonthego.com.
Okay, oh, very good. All right, perfect. Shout out to her. So do you ever run into people that sort of follow your initial advice? They knew they wanted to do something different, tried their, jumped into a whole new second gig, and then things weren't going well. And if so, what advice would you have for them to sort of take stock of what's going on and get them in the right direction?
Yeah, well, I think it's the same advice I would give somebody who is having problems with the job search, which is you have to figure out where along the pipeline is the problem.
Okay.
So is it that you're, since we were just talking about doing something entrepreneurial, are you running a business but you really don't have any background in marketing? Maybe you need to learn more about how you use social media marketing. Or is the problem that your pricing is off? Or it might be something that has nothing to do with the way that you're marketing the business. It's more about the fact that you're trying to do too much all on your own. So the short answer is you have to figure out what's behind the problem and then begin to take steps to address that.
So where in the pipeline, where are the holes in the pipeline? Okay,
exactly.
Where the leak, got it. So what about those people, and I'm sure you come across them, that they have a lot of different interests, or their skills are diverse and they know they want to do something, but they could make jewelry, or they could cook, or they could go consult. How do you guide them?
Well, I think that's what's so great about this life phase is, as I mentioned before, most people don't get that one full-time job. What they do is they weave together a couple of different activities. So as an example, I recently worked with a gentleman. He had come out of the finance world. He was sort of done with the sales quotas, and he didn't want the pressure of that, but he still found the world of finance and business quite interesting. So he's doing a couple of different things. He is teaching economics as an adjunct professor at a local college. He is serving on the board of a local nonprofit because it became very important to him. He wanted to give back. And then the third thing is he actually has a real interest in the environment, and he is looking for a volunteer opportunity with that. So I think that's what makes this time period so unique and so rewarding is you don't have to
specialize. Yeah, you can piece together full of a docket as you want.
Yeah, and you can blend together. And when I say piece it together, some of it might be leisure activities, some of it might be volunteer, some of it might be for pay. And so the important thing is just take a step back and say, what are the different elements that I want in this next act? And how can I put together that portfolio of activities to make it really rich and rewarding and exciting?
Oh, that is exciting. So I'm sure you get this next question quite a bit. People worried that because they're older, there might be age discrimination in whatever they want to do next. Mm-hmm. Do you have thoughts on that? And where do you advise folks?
So let's start with the bad news, which is, does age discrimination exist? Absolutely. It is very, very real. No disputing that. That said, a couple of points that I think are worth emphasizing. First is age discrimination is much more of a factor if a company is looking to hire you, because companies hire partly based on your skills and abilities, but also based on personal chemistry and fit. Okay. And that's where the whole age factor can become a real problem, because if you're applying to a company where everybody is 30 years old, you might have the greatest skills in the world. They just don't see you as being part of their team, and that's going to be really difficult to work around. However, when a company is hiring you, a company or an individual is hiring you to do a specific project, it's short-term, and they are simply looking for the best person for the job. Who's the person I can get in here who can get this task done? Then your age is much less of a factor, and your experience becomes much more of an asset. So that's one thing. The second thing is, if you are looking for a job, what I always emphasize to people is two things. One is target industries and companies where age generally is perceived as more of an asset and less of a problem. So, for example, you're going to want to steer away from, TV, the entertainment beauty type world.
Right,
and
where
instead,
you at a premium.
Right. And instead, an area like healthcare or personal care services, those types of jobs, having the experience and the maturity can be a real benefit. So that's number one. And number two is obviously when you go in for the interview, you need to come across as somebody who is energetic and enthusiastic and is excited about being part of the team. So you have to, be careful about how you come across.
Okay. Well, that's a really good point. And I never thought about the fact that chemistry is not first and foremost in someone's mind when it's a freelance or contract basis, where it is when they're looking to make a full-time hire.
Yeah, because they're just, it's short-term.
Right.
And oftentimes, too, when you're getting hired for a specific project, you may not even be on site. You may be handling most of the work, virtually. So they really don't care. It's about who can do the best job and who can do it quickly.
Right. Okay. All right. Now, that's good advice. So if I were to say, okay, tell me one or two tools that someone absolutely needs to have in their toolkit as they approach semi-retirement.
Yeah. So I would say I'd circle back to my earlier point about surrounding yourself with inspirational second act stories. And again, I would refer people to my website, to the list of 100-plus great second act career resources that I have there.
They're great.
I think that's just so helpful to do. I think as you read these stories, they're exciting. They're going to give you a ton of ideas and resources.
Okay.
So that's the first thing. that I would suggest to people. And the second thing is, take advantage of all the training that's out there. I think, again, you can take a short-term workshop or a class. And again, that's going to allow you to very quickly determine, is this something that I really want to invest more time and energy in, or is this just something that, I probably don't want to turn into a work option.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. So you obviously have speaking of having a portfolio of activities, you're blogging, you're writing, you've got a lot going on. What is next for you?
What's next is actually that I am just on the verge of releasing a digital product. It will be an online class. It's called Design Your Second Act. It should be up and running in the next couple of weeks, and so really excited about that. And I encourage people to sign up for my newsletter because I will have a special introductory discount for people on the newsletter. But it's a course that is hosted on the Teachable platform, and it's a combination of videos and a workbook and a 40-page resource guide, and it's really for people who are trying to figure out this next act, and I think they'll find it quite helpful.
Great. And you said you were going to launch it in the next few weeks?
Yes. Yeah,
so
probably by the middle towards the end of April. Yep.
Oh, my gosh, that's right around the corner. That's exciting. Yeah. Okay, so people can sign up for on your website and learn about the class when it gets launched on your website.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, Nancy, thank you so much. You've gotten me excited to be ready for this next phase of my life. I still have a couple years left, but not too many, so I'm delighted to get started.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Take care.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco. To learn more about storytelling strategies to catch the eye of today's SCIM online readers, hiring and decision makers, go to www.virginiafrancoresumes.com.